Good morning again. I am the other John. So I am John Klossner. John Borgeson was unable to join us this morning. I am the Director of Network and Data Center Solutions for SMP. And again, thank you for joining the event here today in cooperation with VMware and Carbon Black. So for those of you who don't know about SMP, we focus a lot on being the nicest people to work with. We have a service guarantee that basically says if you are unsatisfied with any portion of the services that you've received that have been stated in our statements of work, you won't pay, or we'll make it right. Give you a little background again for those not necessarily familiar. We have been a VMware partner since way back in 2006, so shortly after the company itself started, and have continued to develop that relationship along with others over the years. Want to say we now have two, working on a third specialization with VMware that many of our national rivals don't have. So far in 2020, here's a little update. A couple things that I would like to point out for today. This one's hot off the presses for the Albany Business Review. We are the #7 top cybersecurity firm in New York State, according to the Albany Business Review. We are, again, a repeat best companies to work for in New York State. Top workplaces in Rochester, is sponsored by Democrat and Chronicle, on the CRN Tech Elite, a Dell Platinum Partner, which, as you all know, goes in concert with VMware today. And very, very soon, not that any of us can get to it at the moment, but we're opening our new office space on the 28th floor of the Seneca Tower in downtown Buffalo. Again, a little bit more about us, and I apologize for the build here. Hopefully I don't go too far. SMP headquartered in Rochester. We have offices and smart people focused largely in the Northeast, Albany, Burlington, Danbury. We've got roughly a dozen folks in Buffalo as it is. They just have been officing from home. So that's where the Buffalo office comes into play. We've also got folks remotely in Pittsburgh, in Kansas City, Florida, speckled across the US. So 5 offices, about 115 employees. Our revenue this past year exceeded $100 million, which is a major milestone for us. It's the pillars of our offering. Again, today we're kind of focused around the security pillar with Carbon Black. However, a lot of times we don't like to view security as just a pillar. It's more of a banner that goes across all of the things we do in network, data center, and collaboration. With that, we'll hand it over to Michael. I try and be quick and get right to the important stuff here.
So thanks, John. So Ted DeSalvo and myself, Michael Rogers, we are with VMware Carbon Black, specifically the SBU, the Security Business Unit. And as John alluded to, not only we partnered with SMP, but we're going to focus today on security. So let's look at the problem today. So traditional AV is ineffective. You have fileless attacks. You also have ransomware, and being able to respond not only appropriately, but quickly, as well as being able to then mitigate. So when you think of traditional AV, you think of definition files. And I go back to the days when I was a system admin, and I think about those days. And you have a definition file, and you've got to orchestrate all the updates. If something comes out, you have to wait for the company to then produce that new definition file with the signatures in there, and then you have to go deploy it across your enterprise. Well, hackers are getting smarter today. So they know that coffee.html is on that bad list. And so they say, I'm going to change that to Mountain Dew.html. And so the typical AV goes, hey, you're Mountain Dew.html, not coffee.html. Yeah, go ahead and go. VMware Carbon Black takes a totally different approach. We take a behavior approach. So even though Mountain Dew.html is not on that bad definition file list, we look at that and say, hey, it's trying to do the exact same thing as coffee.html, which we know is bad. So we probably need to go ahead and stop that and prevent that from happening. So we take a behavior approach. And if you think about the more technical term, we use streaming analytics. So if you look at malware attacks are on the rise, 53% of breaches are non-malware. 93% of the attacks pose a lot of risk. So when you think about risk, you think about really your data, whether that data is customer information, whether it's FTI, federal tax information, PII, PI, if you want to get into compliance and all the NIST standards. And you think about that 68% of breaches take months or longer to actually not only discover, but then to mitigate. And you're talking about encroaching upon a year. And that's a lot of time that you've been at risk, and that other systems and other data could be at risk. So we're going to look at VMware Carbon Black's intrinsic security story. So when you think about today, you think about hybrid clouds, private clouds, public clouds, any applications, and you think about all these devices, whether it's mobile, Mac, Linux, etc. So VMware takes the approach that no matter the device, no matter the application, and no matter the cloud, we're going to secure that. And I'm going to show you all those areas in more detail and how we secure that. So from a philosophical standpoint, if you look at today, we have, not only do we have siloed departments, we have siloed security. We have the firewall group that's different than the network group, that's different than the workstation group, that's different than the proxy group, that's different. And then you think about the fact that all these customers have bolt-on solutions. So things that are added into their environment. In the old days, we had what was called VM sprawl, where all of a sudden everyone started doing more and more VMs. Well, nowadays, CISOs and CIOs are coming to us and going, hey, we have agent sprawl. So we've got an agent. So I know a recent customer, we found out that on their workstations, their endpoints, they have over 16 different agents on the workstation. And so to help, to help fix performance, to help fix, imagine having not only 16 agents, but having to have 16 different dashboards or software programs to operate all 16 of those open at the same time. So unifying that and creating that built-in approach, one dashboard, one agent, even agentless, and being able to have that one throat to choke for all of this, for all of your security needs spanning across the different areas that I'm about to show you. And that's how VMware Carbon Black is different. So when you think about the different areas, you think about the identity. You think about the endpoint, you think about the workload, the cloud, the network, all these pieces. And then, of course, you throw in all the different players out there and all the different names and products, and where they all fit. So you have the identity management, and then you have the desktop team. And then, of course, you've got the security specialists. You even have the networking team, and then now you've got a cloud team. And so when you think about it from a Carbon Black standpoint, coupled with VMware, here is how VMware tackles all these areas concisely, but also in one dashboard for simple and not only easy manageability, but also viewability. So you think about the InfoSec team, you think about the true Carbon Black, the EDR, endpoint detect and response. And of course, that's on your endpoints. Then you think about the workspace. So VMware's Workspace ONE, and that also provides that access control on mobile devices. Because everyone says, well, what about Carbon Black for mobile devices, iPhones and iPads? And we do that via Workspace ONE. And then, of course, the networking side. So the networking, thinking about, and the big, I guess, buzzword is going to be, that mitigation within the network, having all those different little silos and being able to do micro segmentation. And I know that's a big word, especially if you're familiar with the NIST standards and what's going on, and they use that quite a bit. And of course, now you've got the cloud. So you have VMware's Secure State, which provides that native built-in functionality for security in the cloud area. So you've got all these pieces that are integrated and working side by side. So where are we today? So today we have the audit and remediation. We have the next gen antivirus, not just a definition file and antiquated AV, but next gen. We have the EDR, the endpoint detect and response, and even managed detection. So when you think of managed detection, you think of MSSP, a managed security service provider. So think of managed detection as that watered down MSSP. A lot of our customers don't have that need for that very large IBM or even some of the other providers out there that provide that, or ReliaQuest, that provide some extensive and very quite in-depth MSSP offerings. But you need something just to kind of help take the edge off as you're trying to secure your environment. So whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, VMware Carbon Black has both of those covered. And then you see the various operating systems, whether it's Linux, even Azure, AWS, and so forth. Now, where are we going? So very simply, VMworld is coming up in about a month, and there's going to be lots of announcements. And some of that is going to be workload visibility. If you're familiar with VMware App Defense, providing that workload capability, it's now going to be built into the Carbon Black console. So instead of having two consoles today, you'll have one console. You also look at device control. So one of our on-prem solutions, our app control product, we're building some of that device functionality into the Carbon Black cloud. And then you even see VMs and containers. Recently, VMware purchased Octarine to provide that same level of security and awareness at the container level, whether it's Kubernetes, Docker, etc. And so we're going to be adding that container functionality in there shortly after this year, shortly after VMworld. So let's look at some more details. So if you think about securing remote workers, that's probably one of the biggest things today with COVID and everyone going home. I even got an email from a customer this morning. Hey, our whole world has changed. All of our workers now have left the office and they've taken their laptops home, or they're remotely accessing desktops. And so VMware Carbon Black offers that functionality to help customers, in this case, decrease ransomware attacks and secure those remote workers. So you think about attacks evolving quickly, siloed tools, bolted on siloed tools, and, having to manage all these pieces. So we simplify that. So let's look at, instead of a proof of concept, I think about it as a proof of value. So let's look at some of the technical aspects of it. So when you think of attack, one of the things that a lot of CISOs and CIOs look at is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so that is an independent company that provides an assessment of many different products on many different, what I'm going to call, attacks. So you see TTPs, you see recon, compromise, foothold, escalation of privilege, and then being able to, maintain presence or even lateral movement, east and west traffic. So being able to see and mitigate and further reduce and prevent this. So when you look at these capabilities, you think of identify the risk, you think of the prevention, and then detect and to respond. And as I mentioned, you talk about a single platform, single agent, and more importantly, a single console. We make this as simple as possible. Now, whether it's a workload or even an endpoint, that is where VMware has a built-in intrinsic security story, whereas in other providers are bolt-on and they're not built in to that aspect. So whether it's detect and respond, about being able to actually see what's going on, and then being able to prevent what actually could happen. So if you think about it, starting at the identify risk, you think about the actual initial integrity check. Let me get that agent onto the system. Let me check and make sure and validate what's actually going on. Let me get some visibility into the system state. And one of the areas where VMware Carbon Black exceeds is providing an industry standard utilizing OS query to be able to query into your environment, whether it's Linux, Mac, or even Windows, and being able to say, hey, what service pack are all my Windows machines on? How many of my users are using Safari or using an outdated Chrome browser or Chrome extension? And so being able to query and know what's in your environment and have reporting set up that every Friday I get a list of all administrators that have logged on to Linux machines using an administrator credential. And so you're going to need that for compliance with NIST standards and, as an example, FTI, because that's the world I come from. So we move from the identify risk into the prevention. So being able to create policies that are very intuitive and that are restrictive but not too restrictive. So that's really where Carbon Black really excels, is that we're able to not just have a toggle, it's off or on, but we're able to get very granular on the control. For example, PowerShell. I need my administrators and my system admins, they have to use PowerShell every day or almost every day to perform their job function. So they need to be able to use PowerShell. But Ted, my sales guy, he doesn't need to know or use PowerShell, and I don't want him to use PowerShell. So with most products, they go, well, do you want it or not? It's either all or nothing. Well, that's not good security, because I don't want Ted using it, but my admins have to use it. Carbon Black gives you that granular capability to be able to allow that functionality. Ted can't use it, but my admins can. However, if my admins decides to do something, if a rogue admin decides to do something that is malicious using PowerShell, Carbon Black is smart enough to look at that behavior. So scraping memory, yeah, you can use PowerShell, but you can't scrape memory. So that would be an example of, bad behavior for someone who can use it. Having that visibility, as you see before you, into actually what goes on, and to have that high level of view of the various TTPs and what areas that attack was in, is critical in being able to address, the issue. So now we move on to, let's address the issue. So we've detected, let's respond. So in the detection piece, I want to mention that most customers go, hey, here's all this data. You really only need this much for what happened. Carbon Black goes, no. Whether you need this much or this much, we're going to give you all of it. We're going to give you 100% visibility. Here it is. And if you need it, great. And if you don't, that's fine too. A lot of the competitors say, yeah, you really just need this. Well, no, not really. I really need to see all of it. And so VMware Carbon Black provides you with that 100% visibility. We even provide updates and so forth within the console to show you, hey, there's a new 0-day that just came out, and here's an example. And here's how you can prevent it. Here's how you can search or query your environment to get that. So then the response piece, being able to say, okay, so here's how that attack worked and here's what it accessed. I need to now add that into a policy so that it can further prevent or mitigate. And so having that capability to do that, and even having some add-on functionality with APIs. So VMware Carbon Black has a very extensive API set. So we interact with, and you see a list of the companies. You see Logarithm and Splunk. Some of the bigger companies that get into that SIM. We work with QRadar. Those of you that have ServiceNow, and VMware Carbon Black, I know into this next quarter is really extending some of the capabilities and functionality with ServiceNow. So as an example, if you have ServiceNow, depending on your modules, especially if you have a workflow, Ted, a typical end user, gets a regular virus. That's going to then spawn a ServiceNow ticket that goes to your level 1 help desk that says, hey, Ted, I'm going to open a ticket. Ted's got a virus. We need to kind of take care of this. But what happens if the CFO has a Bitcoin miner on his machine and his multi-factor authentication basically was hacked, stolen, etc.? And I never thought I'd say this, but I've actually seen that now twice. And that needs to be a ServiceNow ticket, but I don't need a level 1 help desk. I need a senior level 3. I need a phone call, to the CFO. And so you can do that with workflow and ServiceNow with the APIs. So I want to kind of mention the roadmap. And you see the various pieces and parts that we've talked about, the identity, the endpoint, the workload. And as I mentioned, you're going to see at VMworld coming up all these announcements around workload protection, as well as containers. And I'm just going to go ahead and expand this out. So even today, there's already functionality in Workspace ONE. So if you have Workspace ONE, there's already some of that built-in functionality, and you're just going to expand the feature set and what you can do and how you can do it with Workspace ONE. We're being added into NSX. If you think about the relationship between VMware's App Defense and VMware's NSX. App Defense would, even before the acquisition of Carbon Black, VMware would get its intel, security intel from Carbon Black that says, hey, this is a bad thing. And App Defense goes, hey, we have 5 or 6 workloads that have this particular functionality that could be impacted by what Carbon Black says. So it goes over to NSX and fires over to NSX intelligence. And NSX intelligence goes, ooh, that's definitely bad. Let's create a firewall rule. Let's create a way right now to automatically mitigate that with those affected workloads. So having that even additional functionality of VMware Carbon Black and that intel, that threat intel built into NSX and the microsegmentation and the network firewall, the network security side of the house, that is going to be here. You think about the integration of Tanzu, and it even mentions there the octarine, the providing of the container security. I will check the chat to see if there's anything else. I want to turn this back over to John. Feel free to ask questions. I'm available.
Thanks, Michael. I apologize for the abrupt transition there. I certainly wasn't expecting it. I don't see anything in the chat window or the Q&A. If anyone wants to raise their hand in the app, we can certainly bring you on here live. Jennifer, anything that, or Ted, anything either of you folks want to add here before we wrap up real quick?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to mention that VMworld is coming up and it's free this year. It's virtual and we'd love for you to attend. For more information, just contact us. Thank you.
That's a great point, Ted. I want to talk about one of the silver linings of this COVID thing is that VMware and lots of the other once difficult sometimes to attend events are all virtual, and we can all benefit from them. So yeah, absolutely. To second what Ted said, if anyone needs information on how to sign up for VMworld virtually this year, reach out. Couple emails up on the screen. Neither one of those is mine. It's good. No, just kidding. So in any event, that's some information there. If you'd like to have any follow-on conversations with Michael or Ted or your VMware Carbon Black team, just let us know. And with that, folks have about 29 minutes back to grab a sandwich.